Okay. And we are live.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the Sustainability Advisory Committee on Energy and the Environment. My name is Tim Ormond, and I'm serving as chair. This is our January 18th, 2023 meeting. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website, and also linked on the committee page. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone. The public had an opportunity to provide public comment via email or voicemail. Any comments submitted have been provided to committee members and will be linked in the meeting minutes. We also have an option for the public to provide live public comment over the phone through the phone number listed on the engagement hub, which is linked on the committee webpage. On today's agenda, there will be 3 opportunities to provide public comment. First, on item 3A, under unfinished business titled Approval of Update to Bylaws. Second, on item 3B, under unfinished business titled Recommendation on Name Change to Sustainability Advisory Committee, SAC, and membership categories. Lastly, the third opportunity is at the end of the agenda and is titled Public Comment. Please do not enter the speaker queue until the agenda item you're wishing to speak on has been called to the floor. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. And this is my first time as chair. I feel like one of the royals, but please be patient with any flubs. So from here, I will go through and introduce all the committee members who are participating virtually. Okay, reading my script here. Okay. Please make sure to mute your microphone if you're not speaking. When you have a question or would like to speak, use the raise hand button or unmute your microphone. Please remember to mute your phone after you have finished speaking. Committee members, as I call your names, please say a quick hello or the greeting of your choice. All right. First is Ashley Case.
Hi.
Steve Barron.
Hello, everybody.
Alicia Goldstein.
Good afternoon.
Sophie Mullinex.
Hi there.
Joel Osgood.
Hello, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And I think we have 3 members, Chris Pellrine, Michael Totten, and Kim Austin, who are not present. Is that correct?
Yes.
We also do not have our city council liaison, who is Maggie Ullman, correct? But we do have our wonderful staff members from our sustainability office, including Bridget Herring, Kiara Boulan, and Nicole Bronner or Broner.
It's Nicole Broner.
Welcome. Okay, to help our huge audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud and do a vocal roll call for each vote. Additionally, I ask the committee members to raise their hand to speak, and I will call upon you. So the first item on our agenda is approval of meeting minutes. Hope everyone's had a chance to read them, and does anyone have any questions, discussion? And if not, we can make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'm happy to move to approve the minutes if there's no discussion.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have a second?
I can second, although since several of us weren't at the last meeting, I'm not sure what sense of veracity we can give to the meeting minutes.
Good point. Can the meeting chair second the motion? I'd be happy to do that.
Sure.
I love all these superpowers.
I think in this instance, it makes sense, but not something that's standard practice.
Okay. Great. Well, that takes us to our exciting.
You need to vote on them though.
Oh,
I need to do a roll call vote since
Okay.
we're virtual.
We have Michael. So we're going to do a roll call to approve the minutes. I'll go through the list. We'll start with Joel Osgood, Ashley
Aye.
Case.
Approved, yes.
Ashley Case,
Can you please say it
Looks good.
verbally? Thank
Yes.
you.
Good to me.
Sophie Molinax. I think you're muted.
Yes. Can you hear me?
It's very soft, your audio, Sophie.
Alicia Goldstein,
Yes.
Michael Totten.
Here.
And would you like to vote to approve the meeting minutes?
Sure, I approve.
Great.
I propose I approve.
Okay, Steve,
Aye.
and I'm an aye, so the ayes have it. Okay, now we're into the fun part, which is introducing our new members and our city council liaison. And if it's okay, maybe we'll start in reverse order because I saw Maggie Ullman just joined us. And we would love to introduce you, Maggie, as new to city council and our liaison. Feel free to take a couple minutes to talk about yourself and your
Sure.
liaison role.
Thanks. It's nice to see you. It's so many familiar faces that I haven't seen in a minute, which is just lovely. I'm Maggie. I've been on council for like a month, so we'll see. I have a lot to learn. But Stacey was my number one committee preference, so I feel like I won. Some of my background, which might be some of you already know, is that in a former phase of life, I served in the role that Bridget serves in Asheville. So I promise I will not step on your toes and get in your business, but I feel like it'll just mean that I have such empathy knowing where you're coming from, hopefully. But I founded the city's sustainability department, helped lead the creation of the first sustainability management plan, served in the city as a staff for 7 years. Since I left City Hall, I now work with national and international nonprofits and foundations to build coalitions around climate change. So my day job is working on climate change coalition building. And I love serving at national and international levels. It's really inspiring and exciting. And the work we do is so darn hard that keeping your hope light lit is not easy. And so service at home again through city council is part of what I'm pursuing personally right now, to make sure that as I continue professionally outside of our community, that that I'm part of it with y'all. So thanks for having me. And as the liaison, since I know there's some new folks here, I don't know if you've ever served on a city committee. Liaisons from city council, I'm not a voting member. I'm not here to whip up your votes or dominate or lead. I'm here to listen, learn, observe, and understand where y'all are at, so that there's a clear line between council as policymakers and you all as strategic advisors. But of course, I am always here to chime in and share some thoughts, but that's kind of the role I'll be playing as your liaison.
Excellent. Thanks, Maggie. So we have our...
Take any questions at any point if anyone has them.
Yeah, maybe we'll just go around and do the introductions, and then if there are any questions for anyone, we can do that. So we have not one, not two, not three, not five, not six. We have 4 new SACI members this year, and we're excited about that. And we will give you all a chance just to say something about yourself, a little bit about your background and your interest and what SACI is doing. And let's start alphabetically by last name with Ashley Case.
Hey everyone. So yes, I'm Ashley Case and I'm super excited to be here. I am, I have a bachelor's in environmental studies from UNCA. I'm a longtime resident. I've lived here since I was like 11 years old. So I'm I moved away to get a master's in forestry, but I came back and I've been teaching here at UNCA part-time since 2016 in environmental studies department. And I'm a full-time mom, so I work, a lot of the volunteer work I do has been with my kids in my kids' school. And I was just really excited to use some of those volunteer hours that I have right now, putting it back into the community and in a place where I'm more passionate about than, I mean, I'm passionate about their schools too, but you know. So thanks for having me, and I look forward to serving with you all.
Thanks, Ashley. We'll go over to Alicia.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Yeah, I likewise. It's nice to be on the different approach on the other side. I've spent the last decade working in government. I'm a professional stormwater engineer. The last few years, I was working for the town of Chapel Hill. So I have familiarity being the liaison to the Stormwater Board and being on that side. So I also have a lot of empathy for government workers and what it takes. And I also worked at EPA in DC in the headquarters for a while, working on a lot of great infrastructure and getting nature-based solutions into a lot of FEMA's acceptance. But now I switched to the consulting side where I do a lot of working on watershed management plans and stormwater. So I'm excited to give back and be part of this community by serving on the committee.
Thanks, Alicia. Glad to have you. And Sophie.
Hi, everybody. Sophie Molinex. Excited to be here. I'd always thought that maybe one day I would be able to join Stacey, and here I am. I've worked most recently with the city and the county on the Blue Horizons project, which I helped with for about 4 years and left in early 2022 to work on solarized campaigns around the country, which get groups of communities together to go solar as a group to achieve bulk discount pricing and accelerate the rapid adoption of solar around the country. I am a parent of 2 awesome daughters. I love biking. I'm on the board of Asheville on Bikes as well as on the board of Asheville Greenworks. I am passionate about the intersections of different environmental issues, and I really like this concept of multi-solving, where solutions and policies can, I guess it's a bad phrase, but kill 2 birds or 3 birds or 4 birds with 1 stone. But I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Glad to have you. Thanks, Sophie. And last but not least, Joel Osgood.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me okay?
Volume is good.
All right, perfect. Thanks for the opportunity to join the SACEE. I've been working in the city of Asheville since 2004 as a landscape architect. I started my own firm in 2014 after a bit of a sordid past working in golf resort development, and I got really tired of just the monoculture, chopping down mountains in Korea and filling in wetlands in China. That's not where my heart is. So reinvesting in Asheville, I believe in the power of placemaking and trying to create pause in our daily lives to connect with nature, stormwater, green infrastructure. And largely, I try as much as possible to leverage those voices that don't have a seat at the table with ecology and promoting wildlife corridors, and just inherently appreciative of the chance to join this exciting committee.
Thanks, Joel. Glad to have you. Bridget, is it customary for existing members to introduce themselves or not? And I'm happy either way.
Yeah, I think if y'all want to introduce yourselves to the new members, go for it.
Okay. Michael, would you like to start?
Sure. I'm Michael Totten. I moved to Asheville 2 years ago from Denver. I've been immersed in for 45 years, trying to shrink the ecological footprint of humanity, both at the local and global scales. And back in the 70s, I was President Carter's executive director for the Clearinghouse for Community Energy Efficiency. And from pretty much then on, I've always been focused on providing best in play information for policymaking and market strategies and practices. I've mostly been in the nonprofit world, and now, after all these years, I provide all pro bono services. Right now, my major project is with two things. One, Pearl Jam. I'm their climate advisor, have been for the last 15 years. And the second is Warren Wilson College, where I'm helping them raise the $10 million for establishing a regional agrivoltaic research and demonstration station for outreach to farmers on distributed agrivoltaic microgrids.
Great. Pearl Jam. Thanks, Michael. Steve?
Hello, everybody. I have no connection to Pearl Jam whatsoever. I have lived in Asheville for 4 years now, and before that, Austin, Texas for many years, and before that, DC. I am retired now. I'm a lawyer by training, and I spent the vast majority of my career focused on economic regulation and deregulation, mainly in the energy area, also in the airline industry, and 4 years in antitrust. I've worked in government, I guess, 3/4 of the time that for 30 years, both at the federal level and at the state level, the Texas Attorney General's office. And the last 11 years was my own private practice in Texas, practicing mainly before the Texas PUC, which I formerly represented, and Texas PUC and ERCOT, Electric Reliability Council of Texas, representing wind companies and storage companies in the renewable energy area. And I have 2 children who are well grown and have kids of their own, and there I am.
Thanks, Steve. And Steve is also serving as our vice chair. And I'm Tim Ormond. I am your all-powerful chair of SACE beginning in 2023, much beloved by my many fans throughout the world. Actually, I drew the short straw, and here I am. But I'm also a water resources engineer by training. I specialize in ecological design, planning. I've worked all over the country. I used to work for a very large multinational consulting firm, but then landed in Asheville in 2007. Kind of quickly started my own practice, focused more on ecology and sort of ecosystem restoration. And in 2018, founded this company called Blue Earth. We're a certified B Corporation, the first engineering firm in North Carolina that's a B Corp. But glad to be with you all. So from here, we're going to turn it over to Bridget, and this is the real professional who will get us back on track. Take it away, Bridget.
Good afternoon, everyone. Most of you all are familiar, but for those members of the public, the Sustainability Department is a small but mighty team that I have the privilege to be able to lead. And so I'm Bridget Herring. I serve as the department director. We also have Kira Boulan, who you all are familiar with. She's our sustainability program manager. And then I'm excited to introduce someone new to the team, which is Nicole Bronner. And she is our sustainability coordinator. And she joined us at the end of November. So Nicole, would you mind introducing yourself and saying hello?
Hi, everyone. As Bridget said, I'm Asheville's new sustainability coordinator. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. I come to you from Dayton, Ohio, and I have a background in sustainability as a master's degree, and my bachelor's is in environmental science and environmental compliance. So I am very excited to be here.
So we're excited to have a full team here back at the city. And the second thing I wanted to give you a little update on was the single-use plastic reduction initiative. So as you all remember, the Sustainability Advisory Committee and specifically the Waste Reduction Working Group of last year worked pretty closely with a local advocacy group called Plastic Free WNC to look into potentially regulating plastic bags at point of sale and some other plastic products. And my department, we went to City Council to get guidance on that, which they gave us in October to take a phased approach to this. And the first phase was to eliminate single-use plastic bags for the purposes of brush and leaf collection. And so City Council actually took that action and updated the ordinance to prohibit that use at their January meeting. So it won't go into effect until August 1st, 2023, but just wanted to let you know that action has been taken on that, as well as we have launched a project page. So you'll be familiar that this next phase includes us doing some internal engagement on impact to operations and some analysis of our operations and kind of the current state. And then we'll be launching from there more public input. So stay tuned for that, but there's a link in the agenda under this item that has the project page, which gives a timeline, actions taken. It also has a place where people can subscribe. So if you're out in the community and people are like, hey, I just want to like be in the know on what's going on with that, people can subscribe to our public input, and that way we can be keeping people updated along the way. Does anyone have any questions about that before I move on? Steve?
Yes, I just wanted to know one thing. I looked at the timeline, and which noted that our group, the Sustainability Advisory Committee, considered and made recommendations back in July on that. And just to clarify, my recollection is that we voted. It does indicate in the timeline that we voted 5-2 to support the single-use plastic bags. Just to put a little more detail on that, my recollection is that the vote actually, in fact, was 7-0 on the main substance of restricting single plastic bag use, and that the disagreement, the 5-2 discussion, centered around whether a provision that said that businesses had to charge 10 cents if they were going to offer paper bags. So I think that's right. It was unanimous, I think, on the single-use plastic.
So the meeting is linked on that project page so people can go back there. That is recorded, but you actually took 2 votes. The unanimous vote was to prohibit single-use plastics for curbside brush and leaf collection. And the 2 dissenting vote, you only took 2 votes. And the second one, those 2 dissenting votes weren't because they weren't in favor, but it was because they weren't in favor of not recommending the mandatory 10-cent fee on paper bags. So if you watch the meeting, you'll get all of that context. That gets a little bit more nuanced, but you did only take 2 votes, and those were the 2 votes. So I think the 5-2 just demonstrates that there's more involved in that issue than just a straight like up or down.
Yeah. Could I just say one related thing is, are you asking for more clarity on the website, Steve? Because it does, I guess it could be interpreted that 2 people I was one of the dissenters who wanted the fee on the paper bag. So we wanted it, I guess, even more stringent. Is that what you're getting at, Steve? Is like,
well, I leave it to defer to Bridget and her team about how to present it at the thing. I just wanted to give this background for the folks who hadn't been here right. For that meeting. That the focus of that discussion was on the plastic bag. Was on the paper bag fee, not on the restriction. Whether you want to make changes to the language of the timeline is that's up to Bridget.
Sounds good. We had a hand from Ashley.
Well, it sounds like the topic has already been pretty well decided on, and I agree with you all about getting rid of single-use plastic. It's just interesting to look at the unintended consequences of getting rid of single-use plastic in other cities, and also to look at like how much energy is used to make a paper bag compared to a plastic or corn plastic or biodegradable plastic. And I was just wondering if that's still like up for discussion of saying like paper or biodegradable like corn plastic used. I know like New Jersey got rid of all of their plastic bags, and they now when people do like carry out service or when you order groceries and then have them delivered, they're delivered in those polypropylene bags, and people are like stacking up with polypropylene bags, and it's like having all these unintended consequences. I feel like with all of the cities and states that have already done so much stuff, it seems like it could be like mitigated. And there was a study that came out in the last couple of years that just said like by charging a fee to a plastic bag or a corn plastic bag, then it greatly reduces. It has like the same effect of getting rid of it, but it offers more flexibility for people. And so that, I don't know, that's just my 2 cents on it. But it sounds like maybe it was a closed issue and you were just updating us on it.
So staff hasn't made a recommendation to council on action. So Stacey made a recommendation. Staff made a recommendation to take some more time to do more analysis and public engagement on the issue before we make a recommendation. And so that's the part of the process that we're in right now. And so there'll be more information gathering, and the recommendation is scheduled to go back to city council in October.
Okay. Steve?
Bridget, will our group have an opportunity to review and make another recommendation based on what you ultimately conclude after doing all the engagement?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Good,
we'll be
great.
asking you all for help in reaching people during that process. So what we've talked about is, a traditional survey approach, but then also looking at who's missing from that conversation once it comes up, and then coming up with some more strategic outreach and focus group opportunities to make sure we have the voices to the table that we need. So we'll be updating you along the way and asking for your help with that process.
Great. Alicia has her hand up.
Sorry. I was just going to suggest that in your research, maybe taking a look at also like clamshell containers for takeouts. That was something that I know we worked on in DC to get rid of, because that was a huge trash item that we found in the trash collectors in the river in Anacostia that we installed. And so that was part of the ban, was also doing a ban of the clamshell containers for takeouts.
So the direction that we received from City Council was specifically to look at plastic bags at point of sale and expanded polystyrene, which a lot of people refer to as styrofoam, but is a trademark term, disposable foodware containers. So that's kind of the direction that we've received at this point.
Okay.
All right. Good discussion. I guess back to Bridget.
So then the next item that I wanted to update you on, which is something that we talked about the last time, but was kind of in the works and wasn't final, was that City Council took action to update their council committees. So for the new members or new folks out there to local government, this is one of the ways that information gets filtered up to City Council, is that there's a number of council committees that are made up of City Council members, where they'll hear specific items and then potentially make a recommendation for that to go forward to full council, or to get more information before it goes before the full board. And so they updated the committees, and for the first time, there's now a committee that is specifically geared towards environmental issues. It's also geared towards public safety, so it's now called the Environment and Safety Committee. We also added for the first time an Equity and Engagement Committee as well. So thought that would be of interest. Councilwoman Ullman is the chair of that committee. Those meetings all happen virtually. And I just wanted to give you a heads up that the first item our department will be taking to them is an interlocal agreement with Buncombe County to continue to fund the Blue Horizons project. So as a little bit of background, the Blue Horizons project is the main strategy that the city and the county utilize to kind of drive progress towards our community-wide 100% renewable energy goal. So both the city and county have a 100% renewable energy goal for government operations by 2030 and community-wide by 2042. And so this is the entity that puts some programming into the community, and that's co-funded by the city and county. So 3 years ago, we put out a request for proposal to select a vendor to implement those programs, which is the Green Built Alliance. And as in local government procurement, best practices is to go out to re-advertise after a certain period of time. And so that period of time has come up. And so we're going to look at doing that again. And that's the first item we'll be taking there. So just wanted to give you all a heads up about that.
Great. Steve.
Bridget, I looked at the Environment and Safety Committee, the posting, and I saw that one of the items within their purview is building and maintenance resilience to climate change. And that, along with the involvement with the Blue Horizons project, suggests that there is some extent of overlap between our committee and that committee. And I just wanted to know your thoughts on whether there is or should be an opportunity and how one would go about coordinating or interacting between the two committees when there is overlap.
So I think there could be an opportunity potentially, like as you do your annual reports, if there was information that needed to be shared between those two, there could be an opportunity for you all to have direct, be like potentially on an agenda for an item, something of that nature, if that situation comes up. Is that what you're speaking to?
Yeah, I mean, if the Environment and Safety Committee is taking up an item that, is related to, or that we might have interest or have had interest in looking at, is there a way to be apprised of that and for us to have, input and keep apprised and vice versa?
Right. So generally things will come here first and then go there. So as in like our municipal climate action plan, that'll come here first for your all's, recommendation, consideration, context, then that would go there before then it went to full council. So you would kind of be the first stop shop. I think same if that committee received an item that they wanted further study on, or they wanted some of that strategic advisory capacity, they could also say, can Stacey take a look at this? So I think that's kind of the two-way conversation. And that's something that as your staff liaison, I try to keep you all in the loop on, which is what I was trying to do right now.
Great. Maggie has her hand up.
Yeah, and I'll just say, each of us on council are liaisons to a lot of different boards and commissions like CC, but we're really lucky in that I'm on this one and I'm the chair, which means I work with staff directly to set the agendas. So theoretically, I'll be able to be that double check, and Bridget, part of her role is to do that, but me as well. And so also just in general, I think watching what comes up on those agendas, and my inbox is always open and my front door is always open, so I'm happy to chat at any time as the council liaison there.
Excellent. Great. So I guess moving on, we're on to 2C, 2023 goals. And I'm wondering if Kiera or somebody might do a screen share. So the 2023 goals are from our annual report that was recently submitted. And it's a lot of words, and I'm happy to read them, but I don't want to put anyone to sleep either. So we could just kind of look at these together. I don't know if it's possible to make it bigger, or maybe it's just my screen, Kiera, but could be the way I'm displaying it. I'm more of it. Okay, here we go. So this would be on the last page of our 2022 annual report under upcoming goals. So I don't know if everyone has had a chance to read these yet. Essentially, of these 8 goals, they correlate with our working groups. The first 2 would be our energy and carbon group. The third one is our stormwater and green infrastructure. And then the last 4 through 8 will correspond with our community resilience group. Any opinions on whether we want to read these out loud, or we could just say, everybody please read them. And if you're in, we will organize these better so that all of the working groups will have more clarity on what their goals are for 2023. In addition to the annual report, we're going to be weaving in the action items from the upcoming MCAP, which stands for Municipal Climate Action Plan, that we're going to talk about a little bit. So I guess if nobody wants me to read them out loud, that sounds great to me. And we can go on to number 3 in our agenda. We'll start with 3A, which is the approval of update to bylaws, and Steve's going to handle that. You're muted, Steve. You're muted, Steve, if you can.
I thought it'd go more smoothly if you couldn't hear me. The bylaws allow us to amend them by majority vote, but they have to be presented in writing at the preceding meeting before you can have a vote, which is why I understand that some of these changes are marked in green and some of these changes are marked in yellow. And Bridget, you jump in and correct me if I misspeak at any point, please. The color-coded green items, as I understand it, were previously noticed and we can vote on them today.
You can vote on both because all the changes in yellow were discussed at your last meeting. I just wanted to make it clear that so people could follow along if they looked at the meeting materials from last time.
All right.
That there were ones that were noticed and then there was ones that the committee discussed in the meeting, which couldn't have changes made on them right away, so that people are all on the same page so they could follow the thread.
Okay. I get the only question I have on that, I don't want to get too detoured on that, is that I know that some of the language here in yellow wasn't specifically presented, like on the conflict of interest, that wasn't specifically presented. And my recollection is that the bylaws say you have to have presented them in writing. This is Article 10. I'm sorry. Must be all amendments must be voted on at a regular meeting of the committee and presented to the committee in writing at the regular meeting preceding the meeting at which the vote was taken. So just a question about whether we can vote on that conflict of interest piece, which I'll get to, but I'm happy to go through the rest of it for the time being now, unless you want to speak to that question about whether we can vote now.
I think because you discussed it, you could vote on what's in green and yellow, but if you want to make further changes like what you suggested, Steve, that's also in here, those would need to be waited until a later time.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, to take it from the top, I'm not gonna go through and read each of them. The green color coded items, which were previously in there are 3 of them simply. One is to reduce the number of regular meetings from 9 to 6, and that reflects our decision at the last meeting to meet every other month and have active working groups in between. So that's Article 5.1, right? You see that. And then the other 2 green color coded items are simply very minor, added for flexibility. On 5.2, we will adopt a meeting schedule, quote, once annually instead of specifying it's at the beginning of the year. And a new chair in Roman 4.1 says that the chair's election basically begins when the chair is elected, not, quote, beginning on July 1st. So that's just added flexibility. The color-coded yellow items, many of them in various places delete the phrase energy and environment, which would reflect a discussion we had at the last meeting about some members' desire to shorten the name, which is an item to be discussed following this, from SAC to SAC, and drop energy and environment. And I think we probably, again, Bridget, you or anybody can second guess me, probably ought to hold off on doing that until we get, if we decide to request a name change, get City Council to approve that name change. And that brings me to the conflict of interest provision. If you can go to 7.5. All that yellow stuff right there. Yeah. Yeah, we talked about this at the last meeting, and we actually had some discussion about whether there was discussion at the meeting about whether it would be better to just say anybody who has a conflict of interest, however that's defined, just can't participate in any manner whatsoever, or whether it would be nonetheless constructive to have any potential conflict of interest disclosed, allow that member to participate in the discussion, but not to vote on it. All of that became moot, I think, shortly after the meeting when, who was it, Ann Keller, discovered that the board and commission rules actually speak to the question of what's a conflict of interest. And so I think that the intent here is to have our bylaws reflect what the board and commission rules are. The board and commission rules actually state those 4 items that you see listed there to define how to deal with potential conflicts of interest. The language that you see, the paragraph that you see preceding it, Kira, for whomever, you could scroll just a little bit down or up rather. Yeah, right there. There's this first paragraph that's sort of a variation on the language that's struck that that language does not appear in the board and commission rules. And I think it's kind of imperfect to leave it the way it is there. I found that this new opening paragraph to some extent was redundant, and in one respect at least was somewhat ambiguous. And let me show you the point. If you could just scroll up a touch. No, I'm sorry. I'm going the wrong way. If you could, yeah, those two, right. Why can't I move it on my, yeah. The language that remains in both of these opening paragraphs is that a member may not take part in the hearing which the member is personally or financially interested. And I'm unclear, at least I'm unclear what personally interested might be. And I wonder if it is the same as, if you look down at number 1, which are in the board and commission rules, which says, shall not participate in discussion on any item voting in which they're involving their own official conduct or financial interest. So this is kind of the roundabout way of suggesting that maybe the safest way or the most straightforward way to deal with this provision is either to omit this opening paragraph and just stick with what the board and commission rules say, or, and if Kira, what I did was send over to Bridget and Kira I just merged the 1 through 4 into this opening paragraph and took out personally interested and substituted the involving their own official conduct. And if you could, can you show that change? And Bridget, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to mention an instance that might be personal versus financial. Like Sophie mentioned, she's on the board of Asheville Greenworks. So she might not have a financial interest in that organization, but she might have a personal one. We contract with Asheville Greenworks to implement some of our waste reduction strategies and programs. And so, you know, if we brought that forward to the committee and she said, I really want to advocate that you double their contract or something of that nature, that could be a conflict of interest because she's on that board, even though she doesn't stand to personally gain financially from that. So not to call you out, Sophie, but just like as an example of like how we're involved in the community and could have a personal vested interest versus a financial one.
I guess I would ask whether that sort of thing, I don't know whether that sort of thing should rise to the level of conflict of interest that should disqualify Sophie from participating in the discussion. Surely disclosure ought to be made. I would think that someone would do that in that situation. But you know, we all bring in areas in which we're involved, in which we have, you know, personal interests and are devoting time, and that's actually part of why we're here. So I don't know, but apart from whether you think it's good or bad, I guess the question I have is whether we should or whether it's appropriate to go beyond what the boards and commission rules say. And I'm happy to go with whatever you like. And I would like you to put up that other alternative language, but just so people can see it. But whatever other people think, I'd leave it. I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Steve. My, I guess, general opinion is if the board and commission standard rules, if we don't have a reason to alter them, then why not just stick with them? You know, if we had some special consideration, then maybe we would use something different. But if not, why not just go with the standard?
And I'm easy. I'm fine with that. And there are two ways of doing that. One is just literally cutting and pasting as was done here, 1, 2, 3, 4, or merging that language up into a single paragraph, which is what I did, which you haven't seen yet. But whatever, and whatever anybody else thinks.
Do you know about the chronology of these? Did the SACE bylaws predate the current version of the board and commission rules? We don't know.
I don't know. All I know is after your last conversation, we went back and forth with the clerk's office and the legal department about the conflict of interest language that's in yellow. And I don't think there's any problems with the one Steve's suggesting, but
yeah, I don't have a strong opinion. Joel has his hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate from your comments, and I think just duplicating what's already been established with rules on boards and commissions makes sense to me. And I think the outline format is easy to process.
Okay, any other comments? And I take it from what the opening remarks were that we're not going to have a vote on this today because of some of the recent changes. Is that correct?
you can vote on what's in yellow and green if you want to take on the additional ones that Steve's talking about, which for some reason aren't showing up in that document that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Those would need to be waited till another meeting.
The truth is that the merging in that other one that hasn't shown up is really the identical language from 1, 2, 3, 4. But, you know, Joel's comment was it's nice to see a list, right? And this is established, and those are to the effect of what Tim's comments are. So personally, I can go either way. I'd be fine with this. I think we can, since it's the same language either way, we could vote on either. But I'm happy to. I'd be happy to vote and adopt the and move to adopt the conflict of interest provisions as provided in 1, 2, 3, 4 in the board and commission rules.
Okay. Does it make sense to take a vote, you know, partially and then continue it at our next meeting? Because if I understand it correctly, we can't cover all of it today. We can cover what's already been addressed, but not the new changes. Or do I have that wrong? Go ahead, Steve.
Correct. The changes, let me see if I can pull these up.
Okay. Well, okay. While she's doing that, the language that eliminates energy and environment, shouldn't that wait? Depending on whether we want to recommend and get approval from City Council on a name change?
You can. This is what you're talking about, right, Steve? These are your changes?
Yes. I mean, that's not 2 separate paragraphs there, but yes. And it's the same, it's just pulling up the same language from 1, 2, 3, 4, but it looks awfully scary in that form. So I think people will feel more comfortable if they see 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the exact format that the boards and commission rules are. So I'm fine either way on that.
Okay.
So you want me to take these away?
Yeah, maybe.
I think people are, yes, less comfortable with that. There's one other item I wanted to raise, and it's not in writing anywhere. And it was this question of the provision on membership appointments. Is that something that Bridget, you had sort of informally raised that question? Is that something worth raising here, or do you want, or not?
So we have that in the next agenda item, which I guess we should have done before we did this one. But what I will say is if City Council takes an action, that supersedes your bylaws. So if something happens at the City Council level, your bylaws could be automatically updated without a meeting and a vote, because that would supersede your level of authority. If that's helpful.
I was talking about, I don't know if it's listed. Is it listed in the agenda? The question of whether we should change membership appointments, that's listed.
It's listed under item 3B.
Oh, okay. All right. So we can, anyway, the bylaws do specify what appointments are made consistent with the original SACE resolution, which specifies. No?
No, it's not consistent.
Oh, it's not consistent with the original? Oh, that's nice. All right. I tell you what, I'm going to let whoever's presenting next talk about this.
Is that me?
Do you want to vote on these bylaws?
Well, if we vote on the bylaws, well, we can't do it all, right? We have to split it up. Is that right? You
can vote on what is in original yellow underlined strikeouts, not Steve's additionals, in green, if you want to. I think that is fine.
Yeah, but is that really helpful if they're going to be at our next meeting, we're going to have more changes? Would it make more sense just to do it all in one fell swoop?
If you want to keep making changes, but if you keep tinkering with it, you're gonna keep having the same problem.
Okay. Okay. Well, can we have a motion? Oh, Bridget told me one other special thing, which is if there's anyone from the public that happens to be connected to the meeting, I don't think we have anyone. But if there were someone, hypothetically, we would have to give them a chance to speak. Correct, Bridget?
Yeah, you could take public comment on this specific item. So if there was somebody listening online that wanted to make a comment to the committee about the bylaws before you take your vote, they could enter the live speaker queue.
Okay, and that person does not exist, right?
We can check with Nicole to see if there's anybody in the speaker queue.
Would you mind checking, Nicole?
There is no one currently. Oh, there is no one currently in the speaker queue, and you may proceed.
Thank you. Guess with that, would somebody like to make a motion regarding the first round of changes to the bylaws?
I'll make a motion for approval of the first round of changes.
Can we have discussion on that?
Yes, but you need a second first.
Ashley, are you giving a second or?
Well, I was just curious, are we waiting until to be sure you're dropping energy, the energy portion of SACE? Because it seems like what most of the changes are around the energy, but
the bylaws currently don't actually change the name. You see in section 1 still has the name being the original name. So it's just referencing further down in the document. So I don't think there's a conflict at the moment.
Okay, in that case, do we have a second?
I can second then.
All right, thank you, Ashley. Now we will do a vote. Up and down vote.
When do we get to have comment on this?
Now you should discuss it. Ask for discussion.
Okay. Steve, you would like discussion?
I would like discussion, please. Just to follow up on the discussion that we had regarding the conflict of interest provision. I would like to. How do you do this? The discussion is, I thought that there had been, at least from 2 or 3 others, consensus that we should adopt the conflict of interest provisions, the 4 listed items as reflected in the board and commission rules, but not adopt the prefatory paragraph that preceded it. And if I misunderstood that, or if the consensus is otherwise, that's fine. But that's what I thought where the discussion has led, and in which case, if we could, anyway, that's my thought. I don't know what others think.
That was my understanding, is that we stick with the board and commission version of the numbered list without the preamble.
So procedural, I don't want to, do others have thoughts beyond what has already been commented? Bridget Heartburn.
Alicia?
I would just stick with what the other board and commissions, the language for consistency.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll second what Alicia said. I think that makes it easy. Yeah.
All right.
How do we do this procedurally? If is there an amendment, a proposed amendment to the motion, or
I guess it wasn't entirely clear what we were voting on. That was kind of my main concern, was that we had kind of this piecemeal document that didn't seem like it was kind of beyond a sort of draft, but sorry, y'all, I'm kind of like.
Are you changing what's in this proposed revision 1/18/23 document?
Yeah, it seemed like it had multiple versions kind of stacked on top of each other, or Is that not correct? Or?
Well, so this document, if you wanted to vote on it, anything that was stricken would go away and anything that was underlined would be added. But are you changing what's listed on the screen?
Go ahead, Steve.
My understanding is that the proposal is to adopt all of the changes reflected in green and yellow, with the exception of the opening paragraph in the conflict of interest provision. So we would be adopting as our conflict of interest provision only the lists of 1, 2, 3, 4. Can we vote on that? Just not adopting that prefatory language, or does that have to wait?
Bridget, do you have some insight?
You can vote on that now, and I'll double check with the clerk's office if we have to bring this one sentence back.
Okay. Can I ask, does it, again, if I didn't say it clearly, I was trying to say it, which is, does it make more sense to just have a clean document with all of the changes that we can vote on next time, as opposed to the confusion that seems to have infused this voting? Is that another option, or?
That's an option for your committee, but you would need to ask your motioner and your second to rescind their motion if that's the direction the committee wants to go.
Okay. I personally don't have a strong opinion. I just want to make this as simple and painless as possible. And Joel?
I can revise my motion and say that the motion to approve the bylaws with this adjustment to Article 7, Section 5, to remove the paragraph and focus on the 4 items listed. I can make that the motion. Perhaps that solves this issue.
Yeah. Alicia?
It just seems like maybe we should just have a clean version and have one vote, and that way we don't have to do this multiple times.
Yeah. Would somebody like to make that motion, or do we have to have rescinding by Ashley? The first and second, do we have to have those rescinded before we can make a motion to table this?
You don't need to make a motion to table it. You just need to ask the motioner and the second to rescind their motions.
Okay.
If that's what the committee wants to do.
I'm good with that. I will rescind the motion to approve the bylaws.
I rescind the motion.
Okay. Thank you all. So you didn't know what you were getting into. Neither did I. Well, thank you, everybody. Hopefully that was educational in some ways. And from there, we can probably go to the next item on our agenda, which is related, and it's a 3B, recommendation on the name change to the advisory committee and membership categories. And so the reason this came about was, as we were maybe reflecting on our reach and some of the issues that we are working on, they don't necessarily neatly fit into energy and environment specifically. Some of them may be more, say, community resilience. So the idea was to shorten the name just to give it a larger purview, and also just for simplicity. So that's where that came from. And in terms of membership categories, our original bylaws had a number of different member, I guess, sort of check boxes, including, there's supposed to be someone involved in the construction industry, someone, I think, in real estate, and some small business owners, and maybe a couple of other check boxes. And over time, we have not necessarily stuck to all of those specific SACE membership categories. So the idea was to change all membership to at-large members. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bridget, but that's kind of my understanding of it, that we're not going to have check boxes on specific members.
Right. So if in the resolution, the SACE was created through a resolution. And so to change the name, and there's also membership categories, is something that you would have to recommend that City Council take action on. And my recommendation was to remove the membership category so that as you're dealing with different goals, as your goals change every year, you can try to recruit people and then also recommend folks to be on the committee with the expertise that it meets the goals and of the time. Because I think the membership categories were relevant at that point in time, but aren't necessarily relevant depending on what the committee's dealing with. So that was my recommendation for the committee to consider, is asking council to change your membership to being at large so that you have more flexibility on who you recommend they appoint.
Great. So just your input one more time. Would we make a motion at this point to make these changes and then have discussion, or discussion first?
Generally, that's how it's done. But if the committee wants to have a discussion first before, that's at the chair's discretion.
Okay. Just since we had some confusion on the last item, maybe we could just have some discussion first this time. If anyone has any, hopefully this is a bit simpler, but any ideas, feedback, questions on the name change and membership categories? Steve?
I wanted to say that I agree with Bridget's comments on on adding flexibility to have all the appointments made at large. Currently, there are 5 at large and 4 are in these categories that I'm looking at in the original SACE resolution from 2006 that are, may or may not be applicable, but they really do add a kind of rigidity, I think, that would not serve us or the council well. So I agree. I would agree with that change. I'm indifferent on the name change.
Thanks, Steve. Anyone else? Sophie?
I agree with Steve. I'm also indifferent on the name change, and I'm curious if the name change was proposed just for simplicity, or
yeah. Why? My understanding is our former vice chair, Ann Keller, had the idea, I think, for simplicity, but also for just a broadening of our scope, that some of our initiatives may not neatly fit into the subcategories of environment or energy. And so the idea was kind of a simplification and also broadening of our purview. So anyway, I think the idea came from one of our former members, and we wanted to discuss it and potentially approve it.
So am I understanding then that if we vote to change the name, then we have to then take it to council for them to approve the name change? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the process is that if you vote to make this recommendation, then either the chair or someone who you designate, Tim, would generate a document that would go to the City Council Boards and Commission Council Committee, which would then place that item on the agenda, hear that item, and make a recommendation to full council. and then full council would take action. So that's kind of the process.
Okay, Steve. Thank you, Bridget.
I probably just missed the details of what you said, Bridget. Is there a document that provides an opportunity for this committee to explain to the city council the reasons for both of these changes that someone would draft at some point?
Correct. So there's a standard template that's usually utilized by staff, but in this instance, one of you would draft that up. Obviously, I would provide you some support in that space that talks about some of the background of why the name changed, the pros and the cons, and the ultimate recommendation that would accompany your suggestion to both the boards and commissions committee, and then when it went on to the full council agenda. So there was some context around why this is being proposed as an action.
Would writing down that explanation require to be brought back to the committee next go round before it's for approval before it's presented, or can it just go straight up after a vote today?
And that's up to your committee. If you all want to see it again and have eyes on it, that's up to you. There's no official process in place that says you need to review it before it goes on if you vote in favor of this recommendation.
Okay. Bridget, maybe you already said this, and if I missed it, I apologize, which is, if we only change the membership categories, does that still need to go to city council? Okay. All right. So if we're going to address one or both of these, we're going to city council.
I guess I want to hear more of what are the categories really restrictive to the point that you think it's necessary? To me, it feels like a lot to propose a name change and change the categories and have city council spend time on this, when if things are working okay and we can still operate as intended, why go to the trouble, I guess, is the gist of it. And I don't mean to oversimplify. I just want to understand.
Yeah. So I don't think any of our current members had proposed this idea, but I think in general, most people who've heard it did not have any particular, attachment or detachment from the idea, including myself. So, yeah, Steve.
Yeah. So Sophie, one of the positions currently has to be appointment of a member who is employed in the real estate development industry within Asheville. And that may indeed make a contribution. That background may have relevance, but I think the idea is that depending on what's the issues that the committee is dealing with, that may or may not be the right person. And so why lock a appointment of a particular member in to that qualification? And there are three others like that. That's not to say that those qualifications are bad or not qualifying. It's just that having those things can be considered in a more flexible way if you just have all of the appointments at large. That's why I think it's probably a good idea.
Okay, thanks, Steve. And Sophie has her hand, but I'll just quickly say that there are two issues together here. One is the name change and one is the membership categories. Sophie, I think, was asking about the name change, and Steve kind of responded with the membership categories, which, Sophie, would you like to continue?
I was asking about the whole kit and caboodle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I hear you, Steve, for sure. My understanding is that we don't follow these categories currently. And so will we be beholden to them? Is there a point at which we'll be beholden to them? I don't want to make a problem if there's not a problem.
Can I weigh in on that?
Sure, Bridget.
So when the boards and commissions looks at who's applied, they, heard there's nobody from the real estate industry. They then have the option to say, we want to hold a seat open for that and potentially re-advertise and look for that. They did not choose that option this time. They filled all the vacant seats. But that's a way that it could impact future appointments.
Thanks, Bridget. Any other questions or comments? And I mean, I see the value definitely of having the at-large categories. The name change doesn't seem as weighty to me. But if we're going to go to city council anyway, we could bring the package together. If there are no other comments, would somebody like to make a motion either that we support one or both of these changes? Or none of the above? Ashley?
Well, it sounds like we have a lot more flexibility to just leave it at large, like you said. And if that's part of city council's job is to hear these motions, and it doesn't feel like an extraneous amount of work to go through with it, then I would propose just moving through with both of them, just for ease of moving forward in the future.
All right, so there's a motion from Ashley. Would somebody like to second that? Which my understanding is supporting both changes. Joel?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, well, I guess at that point we can have a vote. And unless there are any discussions, or amendments that somebody would like to make.
Hold on one sec. And Nicole, is there anybody in the live speaker queue wanting to give public comment on this item?
There is no one currently in the speaker queue, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Nicole. All right, any discussion or amendments to this momentous change here? If not, we can take a vote. And we'll start with Ashley Case.
I vote for it. Is that the language you use?
You can say aye.
Aye.
Sophie Molinex.
Aye.
Alicia Goldstein.
Aye.
Joel Osgood.
Aye.
Michael Totten.
Sorry. Aye.
Michael. Steve. Baron.
Aye.
And I am also an aye. The ayes have it. Thank you, everybody. The motion passes. So we're making good progress. We will now go to unfinished business item 3C, which is working group membership. I'm not going to go into an extreme amount of detail, but just to give some background, is during our annual retreat in September, as we were going through the municipal climate action plan and different focus areas, we came up with these 3 different working groups that correlate with the MCAP, and basically to make it more efficient and to help the MCAP, I guess, come to fruition and support that work. So the 3 working groups are stormwater and green infrastructure, community resilience, and energy and carbon. And with 9 members in SAC, or soon to be SAC, in general, we were aiming for 3 members in each working group. And before we kind of talk about the assignment to working groups, just to give you an understanding of maybe what type of commitments are involved. In terms of time, we were talking about this yesterday, that per month, you might expect on average somewhere between 2 and 5 hours of work related to your working group. Sometimes it can be less, and sometimes in rare occasions, it might be more. So there have been members in the past who've been on more than one working group. And so that's permissible for somebody who has strong interest in multiple groups. But in general, we have to limit the membership to 4 people. And that has to do with procedural issues and not having a quorum. So for example, if we had 5 people in a working group, that would require some, I guess, special procedural effort, if I'm saying that correctly. So the names, I think, tell us something about each working group, but we can talk a little bit more about what's involved in each one. The annual report with the 2023 goals, that is at least a starting point. And then next month, we're going to have an opportunity to see the final MCAP. And so that will give everybody a better idea of what type of work is going on. So I'd like to just start with that and maybe open it up for questions, and we can dive a little bit deeper as needed. Alicia?
Yeah, so it's the idea that we would meet in the off months and then bring the ideas that we have from the working groups to the main committee for further discussion.
Yeah, typically our working groups do report back to the main group. You know, I think SACE has had different maybe meetings. During COVID, things got a little bit slowed down and everything went virtual. And I think we're still kind of moving from that to a more conventional operation of SACE. So in I think early years, it was common to have at least 9 meetings of the whole a year. This year, we're doing just 6 meetings on alternate months. And the idea is in the opposite months that the working groups will meet. And one option would be to reserve that same third Wednesday. The third Wednesday of each month is our meeting of the whole for SACE. And the working groups could choose the alternate month in that same time window, or something else that works better for that particular working group. So I hope I answered your question, but yeah, the idea is in opposite months for the working groups to be doing work in that focus area. And one other thing I will say is that Bridget and Kiara and their department have been very helpful in coordination and helping us in that in the working groups, so that you don't have to feel like you're on your own on that. Any other questions? And if not, I can just maybe quickly go through what our starting point for the working groups was. And these are just a starting point. You don't have to feel like you're trapped in a working group or that you don't have an option to be in more than one. But I guess starting from the top, stormwater and green infrastructure, we had Alicia, Joel, and myself. And part of that was just based on our professional expertise and backgrounds. I know Sophie did in an email express interest in that area as well. And then for community resilience, we had Ashley, Kim, and Steve. And then for energy and carbon, we had Sophie, Michael, Chris, and also Steve. So Steve has volunteered to be on two working groups. So I guess at this point, I'd like to ask if there's any interest or objections to these initial assignments, and we can barter and trade and duke it out as needed. Michael?
I love the energy and carbon being combined, because I thought the prior to this, it was siloed and there wasn't any interaction between the two. So that's great.
Good. Any other thoughts, questions? Steve.
Just a general observation about these. These working groups are new. They're an outgrowth of the meeting we had last time, which focused on some of the areas of concern in the draft MCAP, which will be talked about shortly. So we have new working groups, we have new members, we have a new year, and we have these sort of new goals. So I think that my general observation is that there's a lot of room for flexibility and fleshing out what these goals are. And I don't know that we're all working from ground zero, but maybe ground level one. And there's a lot of room for, I think, focusing on exactly which issues are important and which not, which projects come up and the like. The second observation I'd make is that, at least in my relatively limited experience here, is that sometimes things come up that you don't plan on. And Bridget is typically the culprit. She'll bring things to a working group that are pertinent, and you end up working on things that you actually hadn't had in mind, which all turned out to be great, at least so far. So anyway, that's just my observation, and maybe even a word of encouragement.
Thank you, Steve. I'm encouraged. Anyone else? And if not, I think we can move on to our next agenda item, the MCAP. Bridget?
Great. So for our new members, the Municipal Climate Action Plan that has the acronym MCAP, which we use quite a bit, is an update to the 2009 Sustainability Management Plan, and it's focused on municipal operations. So this is a project that's been in the works for a little over a year. It's coming to a close, and this is something where we looked at all of the resolutions that council has passed that impact sustainability in the city and the policies that are in place. Because when that original plan was adopted, that was before we had food policy, that was before we had the climate emergency or the 100% renewable energy goal. So wanted to, one, incorporate those documents into our plan. Two, wanted to take a fresh look on what are some of the strategies we could do to drive progress, to kind of refocus our efforts. And so we kind of made a laundry list of existing activities, new ideas. And then the Sustainability Advisory Committee last year had a climate resilience working group that worked with our consultants and with staff to develop a prioritization lens. And the lens that the Sustainability Advisory Committee came up with was feasibility, impact, and equity. So all of the suggested, what we're calling activities, were put through that lens. And what came out was 22 activities that are being recommended in the final report. These 22 activities are what are listed in green and are numbered 1 through 22. They're organized into 3 big buckets of goals, which is one, how do we make the physical things in the city more resilient and efficient? The second goal is more about how do we embed sustainability into decision making and how we spend our resources. And then the third one is really about how do we improve access to our residents and our businesses to be able to lead a more sustainable and resilient life on their own. So that's kind of the 3 big buckets. And then under there's some what we call focus areas. But then, like I said, everything has these 22 high impact activities. So we are getting to the end of this process. Unfortunately, I don't have the graphic document to lay out for you. But we're hoping to have that next month. And so the process that this would go through is once we have a final document, it would come to the Sustainability Advisory Committee for a recommendation. And then it would go to the Environment and Safety Committee for also a recommendation, and then go to full council for consideration and adoption. And so even though we're meeting every other month, I would like to propose that the committee meet in February to look at the final document, be able to see what's in there, and to make a recommendation on that. So that's kind of where we've been and where we're going. And so I'll pause there and see if folks have questions. And that link to project page links to some more background information and timeline about the project if anyone's curious. Alicia?
Yeah, I just have a quick question about receiving the report in advance of the February meeting.
Right, so I don't have the final report yet. So as soon as we have that out, we will get it to you. And if everybody's, kind of comfortable with having a meeting after this, we'll go offline to schedule a date. Because unfortunately, it's not going to be ready by the third Wednesday of the month, which is at 3:30, which is kind of your standing time. So, but yes, when there's a final document, it'll be shared with the committee, and then we'll also post it online for everybody to see as well.
You answered my question. I was wondering if it would be ready in the next 3 weeks. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, let me just follow up on that to see is there a way we can get a little more specificity? What's your target date for bringing this to City Council?
So I was hoping that if we do agree to have a meeting in February, that I would be able to take it to the Environment and Safety Committee in February. The challenge with that committee is it's scheduled for the 4th Tuesday of the month. So if you don't meet that date, you can't put something, that's the same day as City Council meets. They meet on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday. And we can't put something on their agenda and it go to council that night. So if we don't do it on that schedule, which, we can have a conversation about, it wouldn't be able to go to them until the end of March, which then means it wouldn't go to City Council until April.
Okay, I guess I looked at an earlier draft of this and didn't have looked at it quickly. And I just, it's kind of to follow up what Alicia said. I think it's really important that we get a decent window for everybody to sit down and be able to read the document in order to be able to think about it and give constructive thoughts so we can have a discussion. So it may not be practical, but if there is a way for us to set a date in February, later in February or some such, and then on the assumption and target that we will if we can give us 2 weeks to a 2-week window to get the draft and think about it. And then maybe even, I may be overthinking this, but even in between that two-week period, an opportunity for folks to, if they wish to send an email with any preliminary comments so people can be thinking about what the discussion might be. So
I think if that's the timeline you want to go with, that's fine, but then we should just wait till your March meeting.
When do you think the draft will be available for us?
I think not until mid-February. So that's what I'm saying. If you want to go that route, which I think is totally fine, we should just then do it in March.
Yeah, I'd just be leery of asking everybody to review a document, like a week out. But I don't know what others think.
Okay, we have Michael in the queue, and then Maggie.
Yeah, as with Steve, I second your comment, Steve, and I was also part of the review of that draft. I was pretty disheartened by it, made a lot of comments. I don't know how much the actual report will change from that draft. Bridget, do you have any sense if there is going to be major changes or more word crafting changes?
There are not any changes to the recommendations in this document. So all these recommendations remain the same.
All right. So can't that be shared in the document we saw?
I mean, we could have that conversation. I just think it's, got kind of deep in some of the texting of the draft, and so I would be hesitant to share something that's not the very final, so that you're seeing something that might not be exactly the same. Is my
I guess I'm confused because I thought you said there wasn't going to be any major changes, but you're saying
well, it's not going to be exactly the same, but I'm happy to meet with all the new members to talk about everything that the committee's reviewed so far.
Okay, thanks. Maggie has her hand up. You're muted, Maggie.
Thank you. I just wanted to share a key date as y'all deliberate on the timing. City Council has our strategic planning retreat March 2nd and 3rd. So the date when we set our priorities as a body, as an elected official body for the coming year, hopefully 2 years, but nonetheless, like it's a really good opportunity for us to be flagging these priorities. And my experience with these priority setting windows is that it becomes a really important tool for city management to prioritize departmental work plans. And so, my understanding, having read the draft that came through, I don't remember, last summer, whenever I read it, this is a long-term thing that we're going to be doing once this plan is approved. So it's not necessarily like we miss a big opportunity, but we could miss a big opportunity, and it could be really fresh on everyone's mind on city council, not just mine. So there might be advantage to having it to council right before the retreat, but I don't want the tail to wag the dog. But I just want to insert that date as y'all deliberate on what feels reasonable and appropriate and thoughtful.
Thanks, Maggie. We've got Steve next. You're muted, Steve.
Sorry. Yeah, in light of Maggie's comments, I think if there is a way to speed up getting Bridget getting the revised draft to everybody within a reasonable, week and a half or what ahead of a meeting in later February, that would be good. Maggie, you said when is your retreat?
March 2nd.
March 2nd, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the idea would be to get my understanding is what we'd be doing is we'd be voting up and down on recommending adoption or not, but that would provide also the opportunity for comment and on, what are some of the pros and cons and goods and bads and et cetera. And, if we could get that, if it's possible to get that done and get it in the hands of the of council before their meeting, I think that would be all to the good. But I think it depends. I would not want to share particularly the earlier draft. There's a way to get the revised draft out to people in time to be able to do this and have a meeting. I'm all for it.
And as Bridget said, it could go to Environment and Safety Committee in February, but it wouldn't go to the full council before the retreat. But then we'd have a conversation about it. And, it'd be fresh on 3 of our minds.
It would also line up with some of the preliminary discussions about the budget as well, because that's when those conversations will kick off at the retreat and then move forward through that process. So something else to keep in mind.
Okay. Steve?
So Kim, does it make sense to try to set a meeting date? Or the fuzzy part here is I'm not understanding when we're likely to see something that we can review and get ready for our meeting on. Help on date. Can we kind of pick some dates, or is that not? Tell me.
So I think if you want to meet in February, like I said, it would not be the 3rd February of the month. I will not have the document by then. So if you want to continue on and try to meet before the Environment and Safety Committee meets on the 28th, we have a window, a little bit to play with there. I think I was looking at maybe like the 21st. We don't need to pick a date in this moment. If the committee wants to say, yes, we want to do this, then we can take that offline and schedule and set that up. I can work with the schedule as much as I can, but getting this deliverable is not directly in my hands, right? I'm working with consultants. And so
I think that's a great idea, Bridget. Offline, hopefully we can get something maybe the 21st, 22nd, or that week. And, I'm sorry, Ashley, you had your hand raised. I just saw it again.
Oh, I was just gonna second what many of you guys said about being, it sounds like it's an important thing, and to be able to get it in quickly. I feel like even 5 days is a reasonable amount of time to review a document or for myself, at least. I don't know what everyone else's schedule is like, and get it done. And also, if it was just a meeting for that, it wouldn't necessarily be very long, right? So I'm happy to do that in February. I think that sounds great.
Good.
Sounds good. Any other comments? Questions? Before we all go and listen to Pearl Jam, take our minds off of all the... I think Google should have a rock on hand sign that raise hands. I'm going to suggest that. I think that's the end of our business. Do we have any public comments? I know Nicole had read something at the beginning.
There is no one currently in the caller queue. However, we do have one phone comment. It reads, "Hi, my name is Danielle DeBella, and I do have a question regarding the consumption of energy that the city uses for city buildings. I am just trying to get a general figure on what we spend monthly on the city of Asheville's buildings. Thank you so much."
You're welcome. And I'm guessing that's something that you would handle, Bridget? Okay. All right. So thank you all for bearing with me as your new chair. It felt a little bit like oops.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you to all the new members.
Yes, we're glad to have you. I think it's going to get more fun from here. It was kind of like, this was a lot of procedural mire, I think, just to start out.
And thank you, Bridget, and your staff. You're much appreciated, despite the critical comments that at least I typically make on a lot of things. I greatly appreciate your service.
Yeah, same here. And I think, in terms of working groups, maybe Steve and I, since Steve's on 2 of them and I'm on 1 of them, we can try to do our organizing and start that communication going. All right.
Great.
Thank you, everybody. Okay.
Good. Nice to meet you all.
Okay. Take care.
See you next time.
All right.